Hello everyone, this is Shadow. Due to copyright restrictions on YouTube, I can't publish many of the audiobooks you love. That's why I've created a special paid service where you can enjoy over 300 high-quality audiobooks from platforms like Webnovel, Pocket FM, Audible, Wuxia, and more. Each novel comes as a one-time purchase, no subscriptions, no hidden fees. After payment, you'll receive full access via Telegram, along with all future updates for that novel. You'll find a wide selection of your favorite genres and titles, always in premium audio quality. Check the full list of available novels in the description. DM me now to get your favorite stories in audiobook form and start listening today. Chapter 1156. Let's have a little chat. Northern had to admit, he'd never thought a cry so ugly and guttural could sound so pleasing to his ears. He released Cryos's fist, at least what remained of it. The hand was mangled bone, wrecked, fingers broken at grotesque angles. Shattered fragments had invaded his bloodstream and were tearing through his skin. Silver blood poured from his hands, and everything looked like a celestial mess. Northern regarded it with a flicker of pity. This has to be the most an origin has bled, right? He looked at Cryos, his expression sympathizing with him over the matter of his hand. Meanwhile, the origin stared at Northern with a deeply horrified face. No, this shouldn't be possible. This shouldn't be possible. This shouldn't be possible. This shouldn't be possible. His face twisted into grotesque rage. How can a mere mortal have superior strength to the embodiment of chaos itself? Northern gave him a dismissive smirk. Stop that. Stop it. Stop lying. You're no embodiment of chaos. He gave Cryos a knowing smile and pointed at his eyes. I see better now. He pointed to the right side of Cryos's body. All the chaos you took from me is here. You're having a difficult time digesting it, just as your boy over there is with the void. Apparently, something about the nature of my soul made it a home for chaos and void. You took them away from their home, making matters worse. He raised his chin at Cryos. Chaos is rejecting you, isn't it? You have enough power to suppress it, but that's dividing your attention. Which makes sense because it made no sense that you haven't killed us all, and there's the minimal use of your madness tendencies. I expected something more vast, that the entire terrain for 1,000 kilometers would be overturned, that the oceans themselves would be turning on us. He gave Cryos a disappointed look. But now that I can see, I understand. And honestly, it's painful. I had all my hopes up for nothing. Cryos glared with primal viciousness. You mere wind. Wind manipulation has been used. Cryos's entire world shook before he could grasp what was happening. He opened his eyes and was already far away, seeing Northern, who stood on the ground, holding Ull's face in his grasp, as a tiny dot. The origin had been hurled into the sky by a storm of wind that ravaged the entire desert, sending him over 600 meters high in mere milliseconds. Northern studied the result, intrigued. Even wind manipulation is more potent. All abilities have been enhanced, and frankly you poured too much essence into that ability usage, which caused a staggering response. How much? 3%. Northern suppressed a chuckle. Aoi, you might see that as too much, but frankly speaking, 3 out of 100% can't be too much. At the moment. However, you must account for the longevity of the battle and the greed of your skills. At your current rank, due to the rarity of your race, essence replenishment rate is slightly slower compared to consumption rate. Okay, Aoi. I'll try to be more conscious next time. I'm just getting used to all of this. Okay? Northern paused and replayed their conversation. Were you scolding me just now? Incorrect. He still had a feeling that was what had happened, but returned his attention to the young lady in his right hand. Cryos was going to take a while to fall, so he needed to talk to her. Ull remained still in his hands, having surrendered to his grip long ago. The moment he released his hands, she fell to the ground and scrambled back, putting distance between herself and Northern, her face wary and furious at once. It was as if every hair on her skin had stood on end and her awareness and brain had activated a new level of adrenaline fight, triggered by a danger unlike anything she'd ever encountered. However, as soon as she backed away from Northern, the person she backed toward was the same Northern. Eclipse step has been used. Northern let loose a small smile, gripping Ull's shoulder. It's cute to watch you run from me. Ull glanced over her shoulder, terror painted upon her face by a sadistic and hateful artist, her eyes trembling frantically. It's all right. I won't hurt you. We just need to talk. Northern suddenly looked up, his eyes narrowing. That's faster than I expected. I guess he decided not to care anymore. He returned his eyes to Ull. Give me a moment, Mother Nature. Let me take care of that disease of a man. Northern vanished silently with just a slight displacement of desert sand. All tried to shoot away but suddenly crashed into an invisible wall. She frowned and stepped back, running her hand across the air in front of her to detect what it could be. Then her frown turned to shock and disbelief. She ran in another direction, but barely 10 meters in she collided with another wall of air and fell to the ground. From where she sat, she looked up, her expression crumbling. Her lips and voice trembled as she spoke. How? Meanwhile, Northern whispered through the air on a silent gust of wind and seized Cryos, who was shooting downward with crimson flames burning fiercely from his feet. Everything happened so fast that Cryos hadn't even detected him until his hair was suddenly yanked and his direction forcibly altered. Northern rocketed high into the sky at insane speed, yet it felt smooth, peaceful. The turbulent force of gravity wasn't resisting him at all. If anything, it felt like the wind had suddenly started flying in their direction. Cryos twisted his legs the other way and the crimson flames on his feet blazed even more ferociously, but the speed didn't change. In the darkness, the glow of the Origin's crimson flames cast a beautiful red radiance across the side of Northern's face. Cryos gritted his teeth and abandoned his attempt to use more force to fight Northern's speed. Instead, he drove his feet, wreathed in the flames of madness, toward Northern's face. There was a thunderous explosion in the darkness of the sky. Crimson flames scattered like malicious fireworks, and Northern's flight halted for a second. As the flames dissipated, his head was turned slightly sideways by the force of Cryos's kick. The Origin's foot planted on his cheek. That side of his face, which should have been completely scalded by flames of madness, was absolutely fine, save for a small fire scratch near his temple. Northern's eyes shifted down to the Origin from his angle. You've gone and done it now. Chapter 1157. Chit-chat with a superior being. Northern's head slowly turned back to face Cryos directly, and the Origin felt something primal coil in his gut. Something that shouldn't exist in a being of his nature. Fear. You know what? I was going to be gentle. Relatively speaking. His grip on Cryos's hair tightened. But you just had to go for the face. Absolute Zero has been activated. The temperature plummeted so rapidly that the moisture in the air crystallized instantly. Cryos's crimson flames sputtered, flickered, then died. Not a simple extinguishment, but frozen mid-burn, suspended in impossible stillness. The Origin's eyes widened as frost spread across his body like a living thing, creeping up from where Northern held him. His silver blood began to slow, thickening, crystallizing in his veins. Cold, isn't it? Northern's voice carried an almost cheerful tone. And before you start spouting off about your nature of origination and its resistance to such meager abilities, erasure touch has been applied. A dark mark bloomed where Northern's fingers gripped Cryos's hair, spreading like ink through water. The Origin felt it immediately, creeping slowly, but undeniably there. That inexorable weakening of his abilities. His connection to his own power was beginning to fray at the edges. That's going to make things interesting for you. Northern continued conversationally, still holding Cryos suspended thousands of meters in the air. It's slow, sure, but we've got time. Well, I've got time. You've got less. Cryos snarled, silver blood freezing at the corners of his mouth. You! With a staying smile, Northern snapped his fingers. Lightning Chains has been activated. Infinite iteration has been applied to Lightning Chain. The bolt struck Cryos directly in the chest. Not enough to kill, but enough to make every nerve in the Origin's body scream. The electricity didn't stop there. It jumped, arced, chained through his own body repeatedly, each iteration finding new pathways of agony. Northern watched with clinical interest as the Origin convulsed. Tell me something, Cryos. What in the hell could be so terrible about staying in a peaceful prison? Why did you have to come out? You spent 7,000 years there. 3,000 more honestly wouldn't have been such a big issue. I mean, this wouldn't be happening to you. He looked at Cryos with a puzzled expression. What benefit do you gain from marching across my world and grinding it to dust? Why must the world suffer for your insecurity? Isn't this pure, unreasonable moral corruption? Mind you, I'm not a moral person by nature, at least I try not to be. And in all honesty, I wouldn't have cared what you did with this world if I was on my own. But I have 2 mothers, 2 fathers, a couple of elder brothers and sisters. My favorite little Silver just got born into this world. And this is the timing you pick? Wrong timing, Cryos. Really wrong timing. He released Cryos's hair and buried a punch into his gut. The hit was devastating. Silver liquid exploded from behind Cryos's head with a shockwave that tore a wound through the dark clouds. The Origin flew like a tossed coin and began to fall, but only for a moment. Wind manipulation has been activated. Northern didn't let him drop. Instead, the wind caught Cryos like a puppet on strings, suspending him in the air. Then it began to spin him, slowly at first, then faster, faster, until the Origin was a blur of silver and crimson, a horizontal cyclone of superior flesh being subjected to forces that would liquefy a normal being. Northern called out, his voice somehow perfectly audible despite the howling wind. This is for dramatic effect, by the way. I know you're not getting dizzy or anything. You're an origin. But it looks really funny from where I'm standing. Supreme Shadow has been activated. Northern's shadow stretched impossibly long in the darkness, reaching across the sky to where Cryos spun. It solidified, became tangible, and grabbed the origin mid-spin, slamming him to a halt with such sudden force that the shockwave rippled through the air. The shadow held Cryos' spread eagle against the night sky, a superior being crucified on darkness itself. Northern drifted closer, the wind carrying him with gentle precision. When he spoke, his tone shifted to something almost professorial. Let me tell you what's going to happen now. You're going to answer some questions. Honestly. Completely. Because if you don't, Echo has been activated. Northern snapped his fingers. The sound echoed. And then it echoed again. And again. And again. Each echo hit Cryos like a physical blow. Not painful exactly, but wrong. Each repetition somehow more real than the last, building in intensity until the origin felt like reality itself was slapping him across the face 7 times in rapid succession. I'm going to get creative. And trust me, you have no idea how vast and incomprehensibly diverse my toolkit is now. Cryos glared at him through eyes that were beginning to frost over at the edges. You cannot kill me. Oh, absolutely not. Northern agreed cheerfully. You're an origin. Probably takes some cosmic-level nonsense to actually end you permanently. But here's the thing. He leaned in close, his breath creating small clouds of crystallized air. I don't need to kill you. I just need to make you wish I could. Dread manifestation has been activated. The supernatural fear rolled off Northern in waves, and for the first time in his existence, Cryos felt something he thought impossible, genuine primal terror. Not fear of death, but fear of something worse. Fear of being utterly, completely, humiliatingly overpowered by something that shouldn't be able to touch him. Northern continued, his voice light and conversational again, as if they were discussing the weather. So, question 1, why exactly did you think taking chaos from me was a good idea? Because from where I'm standing, or floating, rather, it seems like you bit off more than you could chew. He paused, studying Cryos' frozen, terror-stricken face. And please take your time answering. We've got all night. Well, I do, and I have a lot of questions. You've got until that mark spreads far enough that you can't even manifest properly anymore. Northern glanced at where the erasure touch mark had spread to cover nearly a quarter of Cryos' torso. Actually, that might be sooner than I thought. Better start talking. Quickly. He smiled. An expression of pure, sadistic delight. Unless you'd like to see what else I picked up recently. I've been dying to try out this absolute lock thing on an actual origin. The description says it can seal abilities completely. I'm curious if it'll work on you. Wanna be my guinea pig? Chapter 1158. Cryos' purpose. Cryos laughed like a madman. Behavior not befitting the origin of madness even. Just pure, shameless, undignified madness. He looked and sounded like one at this point. Silver blood streaked his teeth as he bared them at Northern. You're all fools. You know nothing. Hence the question, Cryos. Northern gave him a backhanded slap that sent spit and silver blood spraying from his mouth as his head whipped away. What do you want with the chaos? Cryos looked down, trying to fix his shifted jaw. Then he glared at Northern. Isn't it obvious? Power. Northern gave the origin a disgusted look. That you had to murder your son back then and don't mind doing it now? Cryos' eyes blazed with resolve. Despite the power he has, he's a coward. I was and still am the only one who will do what's right. Northern's gaze remained still. And that would be? The resolve in Cryos' eyes didn't waver despite his state. Burn the world to avenge my wife. You think I was thrown in that prison against my will? All of them knew nothing. This was the only way for me to enter the remnants of the Echo Realm and destroy their source of feeding. Northern scrunched his face, looking at Cryos with slight confusion. But he instantly analyzed what the origin had just said. So you're saying, you allowed yourself to get imprisoned in the line between chaos and peace so you could access the remnant of the Echo Realm, which I presume is my world. To cut? Whose source of feeding? Cryos gave him a dark, disappointed look. If you cannot reach such conclusions with all I've just said, there's nothing you don't know about this world. Northern was reaching a conclusion actually. It was slightly foreboding to consider, but what Cryos was trying to say was that all of them, right here, right now, served only one purpose: foodstuffs for the origins. But how? Was it through death? Was it life itself? Everything they knew about history, which part about it made any sense? Northern's mind began to race, and as he felt like he was tugging at the borders of what could be the truth, It was beginning to look as if this was knowledge he should back away from. Because if he continued further, it was going to change everything. Tremendously. Cryos laughed eerily as he watched Northern's face. You're already realizing it, aren't you? Northern frowned for a moment and gave the Origin another sharp slap. Shut up. Tell me. What happened to your wife? She's an Origin. What sort of death could have happened to her that was beyond known or expected? I'm guessing she was killed. By whom and why? That's exactly what I'm asking. I'll be damned to tell you. Northern studied the black marks still spreading over his body. Listen, you're damned already. But you still have your son. And who knows, I could be in the mood and decide to avenge you. The least reasonable thing you can do right now, Cryos, is talk to me. He gently placed a hand on the Origin's shoulder, his voice softening with care. I know it's unexpected and beyond your pay grade of understanding. But it's the truth. You got overpowered by me, beaten black and blue by me, a supposed lower being. Your pride has been ground into the sand, and while that's so difficult to accept, his voice took on an encouraging tone. I implore you to move past the worthless limitations of pride that you've bound yourself with. Realize this is beyond you, and talk to me. Right now, I'm the most reasonable person you'll meet in this world, and on your side. He scoffed. Although I'll still fry your ass for causing all this mess, no matter how much you try to justify your reasons. But what I'm saying is, open your mouth and talk. Have some compassion, damn it. Cryos was silent, but there was something thoughtful about his expression. After a few beats of silence, he gritted his teeth. Northern was slightly taken aback. Don't tell me that lame-ass speech worked on him. Anki is not your friend. That boy is my greatest mistake. I never enjoyed killing him, but it was the right thing to do. He's a man who will do anything, be anything in order to serve his own purpose. He's willing to lie shamelessly, deceive people, steal and slaughter thousands, as long as he gets what he wants. He's a self-serving, shameless being who cannot comprehend the meaning of morality or having limits. Andra's only sin was birthing that child, and he was the reason for her death. My wife had to die because my son enraged the First Origins, and they decided to strike him down. But that wasn't going to be easy because as long as Andra was alive, he was never going to be killable. And Anki knew this was the very reason why he went ahead and did what he did. Northern looked at the man and asked with a grim tone, what did he do? At that moment, Northern glanced from the corner of his eye. Chaos Prince was flying towards them with the might of a hurricane, his expression grim. He was so far away that no being had such magnificent eyes that could have seen the look on his face except Northern. Northern swung his hand. Wind manipulation has been used. The Chaos Prince met an even greater hurricane that would keep him busy for a while. And Northern looked at the Origin of madness. Answer me. What did he do? Cryos' eyes became distant, looking past Northern into memories that still burned like fresh wounds. He went to them directly, to the First Origins. Northern's expression shifted to confusion. Why would he? Because my son was arrogant enough to believe he could negotiate with beings who had weaponized their own mother. Cryos' laugh was bitter, hollow. He thought he could convince them that the corruption was spreading beyond their control, that they needed to work together to contain it before it consumed everything. The Origin's silver blood dripped slowly from his mouth as he continued. Anki walked into the first throne, a feat that should have been impossible, and stood before the Council of First Origins. He told them what they'd done to the Void was killing all of existence. He offered them his research, his experiments, everything he'd learned about containing the corruption. Cryos' face twisted with something between rage and grief. And you know what they did? They laughed. The Origin of the Sun told him that mortals and half-breeds didn't get to question their methods. That the Void was their weapon, their creation, and if it destroyed everything, that was still their right to wield it. Northern felt his stomach turn. Then Ul spoke. Cryos' voice dropped to barely above a whisper. She was the worst of them. Sweet, gentle Ul, the Origin of prosperity and reflection. She told Anki that his concerns were noted but ultimately irrelevant. That the system was working as intended. That the mortal world's essence was flowing perfectly to sustain them. She thanked him for his concern. Then she told him to leave before they decided he was a threat. Northern could see where this was going, but he needed to hear it. What did Anki do? What do you think? Cryos' eyes blazed. He refused to leave. He told them he'd stolen the corrupted Void from their domain specifically because they couldn't be trusted with it. That he would contain it within himself if necessary, study it, master it, and never return it to beings who'd already proven they'd destroy existence itself to maintain their power. Cryos laughed again, that terrible, broken sound. My son sealed his mother's fate with those words. The moment he admitted he'd stolen their weapon and would never give it back, that was it. They couldn't kill him while Andra lived, so The Origin's voice cracked. So they made an example. They wanted Anki to watch. They dragged Andra before their council and they unmade her. Not killed, unmade. They pulled her essence apart piece by piece while my son was held in place by the Origin of the sun's binding. They made him watch his mother dissolve into nothing while she screamed his name. Northern felt his blood run cold. The last thing Andra said was, "I forgive you." Cryos's shoulders shook. She forgave him, even as she died because of his arrogance, his self-righteousness, his absolute certainty that he knew better than everyone else. She forgave him. That's when I understood what my son really was. Not a savior. Not even a villain. Just a fool who thought the universe would bend to his will because his intentions were good. He gambled with his mother's life and lost. And somehow, he still believed he was right. Cryos looked directly at Northern, and for the first time, there was something other than madness in his eyes. Something that might have been grief or rage or both twisted together. So yes, I killed him. I devoured him. I took his power and his knowledge because someone had to actually do something instead of playing researcher while the world burned. Anki wanted to save the corrupted void, save the Origins, save everyone. I just want to burn it all down and make them feel what I felt when I watched Andra die. The Origin's voice became quiet, almost gentle. My wife died calling out for our son. The first Origins murdered her to get to him. And he knew they would. He knew, and he went anyway because he thought he was clever enough to talk his way out. That's what I can't forgive. Northern stood in silence, processing the weight of what he'd just heard. Finally, he spoke. So the Chaos Prince knew his mother would die if he confronted the first Origins. He went anyway. And now you're trying to destroy the entire feeding system to avenge her. Yes. Even though destroying the system means killing everyone in the mortal world. Including your son, who's apparently alive again somehow. Cryos' smile was sharp and broken. Oh, Anki's been alive in various forms for a while now. That's what happens when you fragment your consciousness across 10 Plague Kings as insurance. My son planned for betrayal from everyone except his own arrogance. The Origin's eyes glinted with something dangerous. And yes, I'll kill him again if necessary. This time, I'll make sure there's nothing left to regenerate. Chapter 1159, Vengeance of Madness. Northern fell silent after Cryos' last words. He knew there was more, there had to be more to this cosmology. Right now, he still felt like there was more, so much more to what Cryos was telling him. But what Cryos had just spilled now had been the closest he'd ever gotten to the truth. At the same time, after being subjected to lies and manipulation over and over again, Northern had become too cynical not to take Cryos' words with a grain of salt. Yet he wasn't stupid enough to dismiss everything the Origin was saying. If Cryos had deliberately entered the prison because it was the only way to slip into the feeding field that the first Origins had created, which sadly was his own world, Northern looked at him with quiet disbelief. How come it took a superior being like you such drastic measures to enter this world, when elves and other beings from the underworld just slip through somehow? Cryos chuckled dryly. What would long-eared dolls do to the authority of the Origins, let alone the firsts themselves? Northern looked down for a moment. That makes sense. He was boiling with hundreds, no thousands, of questions. There was so much he wanted to know that he was beginning to think of undoing the erasure touch. But the moment he did that, Cryos would break free, and worse, he could try to run away. This was the only way, but like this. His questions were limited. He didn't know if Cryos was capable of dying from erasure touch. He doubted it. But the Origin might not be in any position to answer his questions anymore. Even right now, the mark had spread over the right side of his body and was beginning to creep toward his left. Northern exhaled and asked the question that had been building up inside him. What happens to the first Origins if you succeed? If you destroy their feeding system? Cryos responded with a strain, his voice losing its texture. They starve. Then we watch what happens when they starve, what will crumble if they don't get the essence feed that motivated them to build an entire civilization. Or maybe they'll be forced to emerge from hiding while still wounded, and in that state. Cryos grinned viciously, silver blood streaming between his teeth. In that state, I'm going to enjoy destroying them or die trying. The implication hung in the air between them. Northern looked at the spreading corruption on Cryos' body, then back at the Origin's face. He thought about the fact that the void was corrupted and something was happening. Granted, he had wielded the void before and had never felt like it was corrupted in any way. There's something you're not telling me about the corrupted void. What exactly does this corruption mean, and what happens when the system falls? Cryos' expression became unreadable. Very perceptive. Yes, there's more. But that knowledge. He paused. That knowledge is what the first Origins killed Andra to protect. What Anki died trying to prove. What I'm willing to let consume me to reveal. Tell me. Cryos shook his head. No. Northern suppressed the urge to slap him again. Not everything needed to be resolved through violence. Instead, he gave Cryos a calm look. What would it take for you to tell me? Cryos raised his head, looking at Northern sternly. What are you? Northern went blank for a moment, just blinking. Then he suddenly laughed. His laugh made Cryos frown darkly. Well, must have been shocking, right? I can understand, I guess. But who am I? I'm just a boy who wants to protect his life and his parents. His gaze sharpened. It so happens that we're all livestock to the first origins, but in this livestock field, I have people I want to protect, a life I want to protect too. Cryos shook his head in disappointment. This is why it's never logical to reason with humans. Bound by finite emotions, sentimental toward bonds that won't matter. What you call pride is what sustains my sense of worth. You humans have none of it. You'll live shackled because of flimsy excuses like bonds and sentimentalism. They're all finite. If you're a nomad by nature and you reach a new settlement, will you not meet new people? New bonds? After making them, will you refuse to follow your nomadic nature because of the bonds you've made, because of pointless sentiments? Northern gave him a hand chop on his forehead, like a father scolding a child. This is different. Some bonds are irreplaceable. For a moment, Northern paused and internally examined himself. I can't believe I'm the one saying this right now. Northern thought back to what Roma had said, that fighting for people doesn't make you any less weak. Power without direction is weakness. Although he wasn't conclusive about the latter, he loved to believe power is power, even in its directionlessness. He brought his attention back to Cryos. You're hypocritical, do you know that? You didn't mind staying 7,000 years in a prison just to get here. You're willing to burn my entire world to the ground just to avenge someone you love. And yet you call me sentimental for trying to protect my world? Remove the log of dirt from your own eye. Cryos' voice sharpened. This is more than just sentiments. He coughed immediately after, his voice sounding hoarse. They've exploited the world. They created a civilization solely for the purpose of their own replenishment. After fighting a war that was purely hinged on their own pride, dragging their mother into it, and now the entirety of the realm, both greater and lesser fragments, stands at the risk of corruption, and they'll do nothing about it. This is righting the wrongs of the world. Not only am I avenging them, my vengeance will destroy both fragments of the world and leave them with nothing. This is how to right the wrongs they've committed. Northern looked at the origin with a mixture of disbelief for a few seconds. You are mad. Chapter 1160. Resolve of a Broke Man. Revunt's shirt hung in tatters, dark crimson blooming across the white fabric like twisted flowers. Blood traced lines down his face from a gash above his eyebrow, and his breathing came in ragged bursts that misted in the frigid air. His left arm dangled at an unnatural angle, dislocated, perhaps broken. Yet his grin remained. It was wrong, that grin. Manic, like a man who'd discovered the punchline to a cosmic joke no one else could hear. Call stood 20 meters away, his pale skin marred by dozens of shallow cuts, paper-thin lines that wept droplets of blood like morning dew. Superficial wounds, really. Nothing that would slow him down. Nothing that mattered. He tilted his head, studying the broken man before him. Why are you still standing? Revunt's laugh came out wet, bubbling. He spat blood onto the ice. Rents due. Call's eyes narrowed. What? I said. Revunt lurched forward, his mangled arm swinging uselessly at his side. Rents due, and I'll be damned if I let some reflection-spamming cockroach keep me from making quota. The speed was impossible. A man that wounded shouldn't move like that. Shouldn't blur across the distance like smoke caught in a gale. Yet Revunt closed the gap in a heartbeat, his right hand driving toward Call's chest like a piston. Call dissolved into shadow and rematerialized behind him. You're bleeding out. Accept defeat gracefully. Revunt's head didn't turn. His entire body did, bones cracking and restructuring as his back became his front. His face flowing across his skull like wax. The dislocated arm snapped back into place with a sickening pop that echoed across the frozen wasteland. Graceful? Do I look graceful to you? He was on Call again, his movements no longer fluid but jagged, desperate. A dying animal that refused to acknowledge the concept of death. His bare left hand shot forward, the mouth in his palm yawning wide. Call flickered backward, and obsidian chains erupted from the ice, lashing toward Revunt's legs. The broken tyrant didn't dodge. He simply let them wrap around his calves, let them dig into his flesh and draw fresh blood. The chains tightened, trying to anchor him in place. Revunt looked down at them with theatrical disappointment. Really? Chains again? How pedestrian. Then he smiled, that awful, blood-stained smile. But I appreciate the commitment to aesthetic consistency. The chains suddenly went slack. Not broken, consumed. The mouth in Revunt's palm had somehow extended its reach, invisible jaws crunching through the links without him even touching them. Call's expression finally cracked. How are you? Still keeping up? Revant finished, taking a shambling step forward. His right leg buckled slightly, internal damage, probably. You want to know the secret? Another step. Blood dripped from his fingertips, pattering onto the frozen ground like rain. From the day I opened my eyes, I've been poor, and I've always had to depend on him. You know what poverty teaches you? His grin widened impossibly. How to stretch a single copper coin across an entire week. How to make nothing into something. How to keep going when every logical bone in your body screams that you should just lie down and die. He was close now. Close enough that Call could see the wild gleam in those blue eyes. Not the calculating gaze of a warrior, but the fevered determination of a man who'd learned long ago that surrender was more expensive than bleeding. You think these wounds slow me down? Revant's laugh was hysterical now, unhinged. I've worked 3 jobs simultaneously while suffering from pneumonia. I fought monsters while starving on that frozen mountain. You think a few cuts and a dislocated arm are gonna stop me from collecting your organs? Call unleashed a barrage of black swords. They came from every angle, above, below, from the sides, a geometric nightmare designed to give no quarter. Revant didn't try to dodge them all. He couldn't. Instead, he wove through the gaps with manic precision, taking blades through his shoulder, his thigh, his side, anywhere non-vital. Each impact drew blood. Each wound should have been debilitating. But he kept coming. You want to know the real difference between us? Revant's voice had gone quiet now, almost gentle, as he closed the final distance between them. Blood poured from a dozen new wounds, painting him crimson from head to toe. Call tried to phase backward again, but this time Revant's bare hand caught his wrist. The tyrant of reflection froze, feeling the crushing grip, feeling the wrongness of it. This shouldn't be possible. A man this wounded shouldn't have this kind of strength. Revant leaned in close, his breath hot against Call's ear. You're fighting for some grand purpose. World domination, chaos, whatever. His fingers tightened, and Call felt bones begin to creak. But me? I'm fighting for money to rent a damn house and be independent. His other hand, the gloved one, shot forward and plunged into Call's chest. And there is nothing. Another organ torn free. Nothing. Another bloody harvest. More terrifying than a broke man with bills to pay. Call finally screamed. Revant stood there, painted in blood both his own and his enemies', organs dripping from his hands. His body a roadmap of wounds that should have killed him 3 times over. And he was still grinning. Now then, shall we continue? Revant's lunging hand suddenly froze moments before piercing into Call's chest. He frowned darkly and looked behind over his shoulder. About 5 enormous black spears were hurtling through the air from above with terrible speed. He grimaced, released Call, and jumped away to dodge the spears. He watched the ominous things as they dissolved into the air. That's fair. Never really liked it to begin with. He looked up. Call did the same, searching for whoever had interrupted their battle, or in this case, saved him. The being had large wings spread across the sky, hovering directly above and looking down at them. Call narrowed his eyes as he recognized who it was. I'm not surprised. But what I am surprised about is how you have the void. The Chaos Prince slowly descended to Call's front. His face was cold and emotionless. Call, my friend. You have that thing with you, don't you? Call hesitated. What about it? Chaos Prince smiled. The smile was harmless, then again it was evil. A level of madness too incomprehensible to grasp. The kind that could draw in a little girl for warmth and stab her viciously while still smiling. You want his origination. All I want is my soul back. Things are beginning to get rather irritating. Call looked over to Revant, who was slowly moving toward them despite his terrible state. Oh, that one? Chaos Prince pointed a finger toward Revant. Let me deal with him. Something shot out of his finger, blurred, and carved a large hole into Revant's chest. The tyrant stopped moving at that moment, trembling uncontrollably as blood dripped from the hole in his chest and his mouth. He grinned, blood staining every tooth. Fuck you. Then he collapsed. Chapter 1161, Born Again. Northern suddenly paused mid-conversation, causing Cryos to look at him strangely. What? A shadow fell across Northern's face as he felt Revant's dwindling consciousness. Revant was first a result of his cloning talent before being bound through the void. So Northern had a vague suspicion that all his summons created using his clones were still accessible to him. But he couldn't feel them vividly and couldn't feed them essence like he used to. Northern's expression turned cold, and the next moment he vanished. As he disappeared from before Cryos, the shadows beyond Revant rose and Northern tore through them, rushing toward Revant. Revant had collapsed face down on the ground. A gaping hole punched through his black drape, the fabric soaked with blood. Northern's eyes trembled as he turned and pulled Revant upright. No, 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 no. Revant stared at Northern with those dark, hollow eyes, pure disdain radiating from them. You incompetent landlord. What are you? He coughed blood. Northern's frown deepened, dark and dangerous. Don't talk. Don't do anything. I can heal you. Revant slapped his hand away and roared. Why are you here? He coughed up an alarming amount of blood. Fascinating that with such a massive hole in his stomach, he could still cling to life. But his time was running out. May I make a suggestion? I know. I'll heal him with infinite iteration. Yes. But the result is uncertain due to the void's influence. Ah, right. Now that the void is corrupted, that suddenly sounds far more dangerous than I thought. What do you suggest? Form can be created by analysis and copy. Echo can be created by defeat and death. Endless and omniform are woven to create each echo. While still maintaining their past abilities, they're imbued with the capacity to grow, evolve, even without advanced fusion and recursive generation. Northern's jaw clenched as understanding crashed through him. His hands, still reaching for Revant, trembled, not with fear, but with the crushing weight of the choice. Revant's hollow eyes narrowed, blood trickling from the corner of his mouth. You need to leave. That bastard is plotting something. Northern's grip on Revant loosened. The mask, that flimsy fiction of reluctance, was nowhere to be found. Instead, his face showed pure, razor-sharp calculation. Knowing he could fix Revant brought comfort, but it didn't ease the fact that he'd have to watch him die. Worse, kill him. Revant coughed, more blood spilling. You incompetent bastard. Stop staring at me like that. Like I'm already dead? You are. You just don't know it yet. Revant tried to laugh, but it came out as a wet, rattling wheeze. I'm tougher than I look. I'm the leave. Damn it. Northern spoke in a simple tone. No performance in his words. No reluctance. I can't leave. You belong to me, and I don't let what's mine stay broken. Northern raised his hand. Seeing it made Revant frown even in his dying state. Hell, no. Northern, expression cold, drove his hand into Revant's throat, pushing deeper. The tyrant stared at Northern with cold, hateful fury, as though his eyes were clawing at life with the sole passion of destroying him. I'm sorry, Northern muttered as he watched Revant's last breath leave. He withdrew his hand slowly, blood dripping from his fingers as Revant's body went limp. The hollow eyes that had burned with such hatred now stared at nothing, empty and still. For a moment, there was only silence. Then Northern felt a pull. This wasn't like copying a form. This was different, deeper, more intimate. His Shingon activated involuntarily, the demon eye flaring to life as it analyzed the corpse before him. But this time, it wasn't just scanning structure and abilities. It was reading the essence of his soul, the signature of death, the echo of what Revant had been. Analysis complete. Tyrant of despair, Hamel. Soul signature, void entity. Cause of death. Master's hand. Echo creation initiated. Northern watched as dark threads, not physical, but visible only to his perception, began weaving themselves from Revant's corpse. They spiraled upward like smoke, coalescing into something between solid and ethereal. Then he felt a subtle hum, like something waking within him. Hungry. Soul forge active. Storing defeated entity. Blueprint acquired. Tyranny of despair. Endless integration beginning. The threads condensed, pulled into Northern's chest where the soul forge resided. He could feel it, like swallowing something massive, something that didn't quite fit. His essence churned, his soul stretching to accommodate this new weight. And then, Echo created. Hamel, Tyrant of Despair. Variants generated. 2. Hamel, Original Despair Aura, Void Corruption, Tyrant's Will. Hamel Prime, Variant 1, Enhanced Despair Manipulation, Emotional Hemorrhage. Hollow King, Variant 2, Absolute Nullification Aura, Existential Dread. Northern exhaled slowly. The corpse before him began dissolving into black ash, scattering into nothingness as if it had never existed. The soul forge had consumed every trace. Now came the part he wasn't looking forward to. He closed his eyes and reached into the forge. Inside the soul forge, a vast gray expanse stretched endlessly. The 5 square kilometer space felt larger than it should, distorted by the weight of what it contained. And there, standing in the center of the emptiness, was Revant, or Hamel, as the Aoi had addressed him. Northern was curious why Revant was addressed as Hamel, but he had a vague suspicion. Echinization had likely realized Revant's true nature, something that existed far deeper than his abilities could currently grasp. Hamel looked exactly as he had moments before death. Black drape soaked in blood, hollow eyes burning with cold fury. But now he was whole. No wound in his stomach. No blood dripping from his mouth. He stared down at his feet for a few moments, frozen, then slowly raised his head to meet Northern's gaze, his eyes trembling with a turbulent pool of emotions that worried Northern. Revant. The moment their eyes locked, he moved, faster than Northern expected. Revant's fist slammed into Northern's jaw, sending him skidding backward across the gray ground. The impact echoed through the soul forge, rippling across the empty space like a stone thrown into still water. You bastard! Revant's voice was a roar, laced with despair so thick it felt like the air itself was drowning. His aura of despair exploded outward, and Northern felt it immediately. A crushing weight on his chest. A whisper in his mind telling him everything was hopeless. That nothing mattered. That he should just surrender. Northern gritted his teeth and stood, grinning. Crap. This bastard's grown tenfold more powerful. Chapter 1162. The moment unexpected. Northern's eyes flashed cold with a vicious grin. It was obvious that Revant had gained tremendous power by realizing his potential through the variations he'd created. He could now switch between his prime tyrant form and a new being called Hollow King, though all existed within the same person. Hamel charged again, despair radiating from him in suffocating waves, his fist cocked back for another strike. Northern sidestepped the blow clean, efficient, then drove his knee into Hamel's ribs with bone-cracking force. The echo staggered, but Northern was already moving. Elbow to the back of the skull, slamming Hamel's face into the gray ground. The tyrant tried to rise. Northern stomped on his spine, pinning him flat. Hamel's aura intensified, despair clawing at Northern's mind like fingers prying at his skull. Northern felt it. The weight, the emptiness, the soul-crushing hopelessness. He ignored it. His fist came down. Once, twice, 3 times. Each impact cracked against Hamel's skull, sending shockwaves rippling through the soul forge. Hamel roared, void energy erupting from his body in a violent explosion that hurled Northern back several meters. The tyrant rose, blood streaming from his nose, his hollow eyes blazing with fury. Dark tendrils of void spiraled around him, and the air itself warped and twisted. Northern landed in a crouch, then launched forward. Hamel swung. Northern ducked under it, his palm striking Hamel's solar plexus with surgical precision. The echo's breath expelled in a violent gasp. Before Hamel could recover, Northern's knee found his jaw. Teeth cracked. Blood sprayed. Hamel stumbled back, but Northern didn't let up. Precise strike to the throat. A palm to the chest that sent Hamel flying backward. The tyrant crashed into the gray ground, skidding dozens of meters before finally stopping. He tried to push himself up. His arms shook. Blood pooled beneath him. Northern walked forward slowly, deliberately. No rush. A small smile played on his face. Hamel's face flashed with terror, confusion. The next moment, his despair aura pulsed desperately, trying to drown Northern in hopelessness. But Northern's expression never changed. Cold. Smiling. Hamel managed to get to one knee before Northern's boot connected with his face, snapping his head back and sending him sprawling again. Northern stood over him, watching as Hamel coughed blood, his hollow eyes dimming, his body trembling. The tyrant tried to speak. Northern's foot pressed down on his chest, pinning him to the ground. Hamel's fingers clawed at Northern's boot, void energy flickering weakly around his hands before dissipating entirely. Hamel's struggles weakened. His breathing became ragged. His eyes, once blazing with fury, now stared up at Northern with something else. Recognition. Then Northern laughed and withdrew his leg. Ah, that was fun. So much fun. I've always been curious about how I'd fare fighting you. Thank God I didn't try it before now. Hamel slowly stood up. In addition to his slightly taller frame, the color of his eyes had become gray. I didn't kill you, by the way. I mean, common sense, how are you alive right now? Driving my hand through your gut was the only way to save you. That's difficult to believe with how you were smiling just now. Northern laughed again. Oh, I enjoyed beating your ass. Hamel was silent for a moment. Then he slowly stood, examining his body. What did you do to me? He gave Northern a questioning look. What have you become? Northern just kept smiling, then asked, how do you feel? You seem to have gotten your prime powers back. And more. What about your memories, Hamel? His eyes widened for a moment, surprised. Then the shock dissipated. Of course you'd know. Hamel's eyes flew open. That bastard. Damn it. What are you doing here? Where is Cryos? Northern frowned. I can't let my subordinates die. Hamel shouted with urgency. You need to get Chaos Prince now. Leave the reflective bastard to me. Northern's expression darkened, and immediately the gray vastness around them vanished. But instead of appearing on the fractured land, they materialized at the desert's edge. Northern glanced up, a deep frown creasing his face. What is? Chaos Prince was up there in the sky. Call was too. and Cryos was between them, dissolving. Northern's eyes flared the moment he realized it, and he shot upward between the two of them. Both flew back from the impact as he caught Cryos, soaring higher with him. He held the Origin of Madness by the collar and looked down at him for a moment, registering how terrified, and at the same time how devastated, he looked. His body was breaking apart, and something was leaking out from beneath him. "Take it back," he rasped. "Take it back. Now. I'd rather give it to you than let that unfilial worm have it. Aoi. Based on your current abilities, you cannot copy chaos. However, Cryos can be echinized." Northern was confused for a moment. Cryos was an Origin, was it possible? Was he powerful enough to kill an Origin? Right now, due to a rare artifact, Cryos has been mortalized. This is causing catastrophic leakage in his soul essence and all its conduits. Hence, he can be killed. If you want to preserve chaos as an echo, you will have to kill him now. It's useless, whatever you're trying to do, partner. Chaos Prince shouted as he flew closer. I spent 3,000 years designing a dagger that can kill an Origin, and orchestrated this entire moment to test it on my father. That way, the Origins won't know of its existence. Indeed, he made his decision to come all the way here. I knew he would make such a decision, so I made it part of the plan. Right, friend? He glanced at Call, who was standing somewhere on the ground. The essence flowing out of Cryos was splitting in two directions, streaming toward both of them. Northern pressed his lips together, realizing he'd been wrong the entire time. But not entirely. He had suspected and been wary of the Chaos Prince, just not to this magnitude. He'd never thought that Call was aiding Chaos Prince and not Cryos. No, could it even be called that? They seemed to be in alliance, one that Call stood to benefit from. And Northern instantly figured it out. Chaos Prince wanted to test if he could kill Origins for obvious reasons. And Call wants to become an Origin to fight his father. The two of them have a common enemy. He gritted his teeth and gripped Cryos' face. I'm not sorry for this. Chaos Prince's smirk vanished the moment he noticed something. Ice immediately engulfed the Origin, but it didn't stop the essence leakage. At once, that ice shattered and scattered into tiny fragments. The next moment, a terrifying explosion devoured the land and spread across the vast continent, shrouding everything in white. Chapter 1163, New Echo. White light devoured everything. Northern materialized within his soul forge, Cryos' lifeless body cradled in his arms. The gray vastness trembled around him, forcing his gaze to sweep the space. What is going on? Warning. Soul Forge experiencing unprecedented strain. Origin-level essence detected. Initiating emergency stabilization protocols. A large amount of an unprecedented and divine existence has been noticed. The force is spreading. Soul Forge is evolving. Northern frowned. He knew immediately. My soul is reacting to the return of chaos. To put it better, Demon of Form is attempting to tame chaos. Northern felt the urge to laugh, but the trembling intensified. The growing tremors threatened to tear the very space apart. Isn't that endearing? Indeed. However, I am not the one who wants an Origin to become his echo. Hey, you suggested it. Well said. Suggested. Silent disbelief settled over Northern. Nice one. You one-dimensional lodestar. Northern laid Cryos down gently on the fractured ground. The Origin of Madness looked almost peaceful in death, his expression frozen between terror and relief. Anyway, echinize him. Acknowledged. Echo creation requires complete soul absorption. Warning. This will fundamentally alter Soul Forge structure. Northern fell silent for a moment. But the return of chaos would certainly change everything regardless. Do it. The moment Northern spoke, Cryos' body began dissolving. Not into nothingness, but into pure white essence. Streams of power spiraled upward like ribbons of liquid light, chaos swirling among them in violent, beautiful patterns of primordial entropy. The Soul Forge responded. The gray vastness beneath Northern's feet fractured further. But it didn't separate or collapse. Instead, it transformed. Ice erupted from the fissures, spreading in crystalline waves that raced across the infinite expanse. Within seconds, the ground had become frozen tundra, permafrost stretching as far as Northern could see. Snow began falling from a sky that moments ago hadn't existed, each flake perfect and eternal. Northern watched in awe as a mountain rose in the distance, a glacial titan of blue-white ice piercing through clouds still forming. Its peaks glittered with ancient frost, and auroras danced around its summit in impossible colors. The transformation didn't stop. To the east, ice gave way to volcanic rock. Obsidian plains cracked open, revealing veins of molten light beneath. A massive red mine erupted from the earth, its entrance yawning wide like a wound in reality itself. The glow from within pulsed with heat and promise, casting crimson shadows across the frozen landscape. Beyond the glacial mountain, impossibly far yet somehow visible, a volcano took shape. Its caldera blazed with primordial fire, lava flowing in rivers that somehow never reached the ice. Yet their heat could be felt even here. Ash and embers drifted upward, mingling with falling snow in a dance of opposing elements. 3 distinct terrains: ice, earth, fire, separated by vast distances yet flowing together in impossible harmony. This was how it existed in the limitless void. Northern's face froze with half-formed laughter. It's even better. Feels more real. The Soul Forge had evolved from a gray void into a living world. Soul Forge expansion complete. New specifications. Size: Tier 2, 50 square kilometers. Terrain: tripartite domain, glacial north, volcanic south, crimson depths. Time flow: 1 second 15 seconds. Echoes: 1 stored. Northern's attention snapped back to the center, where Cryos' essence had condensed into a single point of brilliant white light. Pulsing, writhing, alive with power that threatened to tear space itself. The essence coalesced, pulling inward with terrible force. Northern felt his soul resonate with the process, the demon of form reaching out with invisible threads to weave the origin back together. Not as he was, but as something new. Something bound. Beginning echo formation. Warning: origin level soul detected. Chaos essence integration at 47%, 68%, 89%. Stabilization processing. Northern gritted his teeth as he felt the strain. His soul was literally trying to contain and reshape an origin, a being that had existed for eons, born by one of the divinities of this realm in its beginning. An offspring of the Mergence. Chaos essence integration complete. You can use Chaos essence. A secondary essence pool has been created. Soul absorption: 75%. Echo formation. Success. Name: Cryos. Origin of madness. Classification: origin rank Echo. Abilities: all original powers retained plus Chaos authority contained. Loyalty: unknown. The white light exploded outward, then collapsed back into a single point before expanding once more, this time taking shape. A figure materialized where the essence had been. Cryos stood there, different. His form was identical to what it had been in life. The same build, the same features, but his presence had fundamentally changed. His hollow eyes now swirled with patterns of pure chaos, gold and purple and impossible colors that shifted moment to moment. Cryos. The eyes didn't blink. He just stood there, staring at Northern. A small frown creased Northern's face. Aoi. Special notes. First origin rank Echo in recorded history. Chaos integration unstable. Cannot be summoned in external reality. The Echo Cryos is entering enforced hibernation. Northern's confusion flickered. What? Why is it like that? Due to the large difference between soul ranks, the Echo Cryos is clashing with your soul. If this continues, it will cause a fractured soul and may slowly kill you. Thus Echo Cryos was forced into hibernation until your soul has grown. Northern sucked his teeth painfully. Damn. I'm tired of being limited. Just when I thought I was powerful. You are powerful. Your standards, they just happen to be quite high. Northern sighed and shook his head. You can't blame me. As a nomad, I was taught how to kill a monster by a monster, and I ended up killing that monster and his master. To think that simple issue would escalate into all of this. Somehow I feel targeted. Northern frowned slightly, thinking back on the memories. He tilted his head. Aoi, what do you think about fate? Do you believe in it? Invalid request. Command not recognized. How convenient for you. He exhaled. Aoi, what happened to all the monsters? People? Everyone I've ever killed? The memory of chaos remembers all. The memory of formless also remembers all. Northern smiled. Soul numbers are being recorded at the moment. In the meantime, Northern's eyes flared. Yeah, I'm needed outside. Chapter 1164, Madness Runs in Their Family. The land Northern came to was vastly different from what he'd left behind amidst the explosion, and he had to admit the new development shocked him. Mildly but undeniably. The moment he arrived, he confirmed the heat signatures of his people. Raven and Thalen had somehow survived. Jessi and Linus were protected by Revunt. Amel. It'll certainly take me a while to get used to calling him that. Lastly was Ul. The space prism he'd constructed for her still stood. The explosion might have been cataclysmic, but the space prism was also a revised edition of an Origins authority. He looked up and saw Kal and the Chaos Prince were still there. And Byran had protected what remained of Luingard by simply cutting through the impact. After confirming all of that, Northern's gaze twisted toward the Chaos Prince with fury. He stared down at Northern, a wild smile frozen on his face. Wow, who would have thought you'd go right ahead and steal my kill? You thieving snake. Green snake under the green grass you are. I trusted you, damn it. Northern's blue eyes blazed. I was wrong. Apparently you're the real madness. Your father over here is a learner compared to you. The Chaos Prince's gaze darkened, his smile turning cold. Now you're just being unfair. First you break my trust in you, then you steal my kill. Not to mention the fact that the person you just killed is my father, Northern. You killed my father. Northern gritted his teeth. This son of a bitch. The Chaos Prince's smile twisted into something darker, more feral. His form began to ripple as void energy leaked from his pores like black smoke. You know, Northern, I was just thinking. After all of this is over, I'd go ahead and tell you the truth beneath the lies. His face contorted. But you just had to go and do this, didn't you? Stealing is very bad. Northern. Very bad. Especially when that friend trusted you with their life. The space around him warped, reality bending like melted glass. Northern's eyes narrowed, blue light emanating from them as he glared at the Chaos Prince. Layer 1. Third eye has been activated. Through the supernatural lens, Northern could see it. The Chaos Prince's soul was being devoured from within. The void wasn't just power he wielded, it was consuming him, rewriting his existence one molecule at a time. His soul structure looked like a star going supernova in slow motion. This fool, Northern stated flatly. You're killing yourself. Chaos Prince laughed wildly. Is that how it looks to you? Don't worry, the night is always darkest just before the morning. This is how my amazing body processes things. The return of Mother to the embrace of my soul is still shocking to the essence that defines my meaning. So, let's just say I'm processing. But that doesn't stop me at all. He shot at Northern with blistering speed, then thrust both hands forward. The void answered. Reality itself began to unravel in a spreading circle, existence simply ceasing to be. The ground didn't explode or disintegrate. It simply stopped existing, leaving behind nothing. Not even emptiness. Just nothing. Northern frowned, obviously bothered by the Chaos Prince drawing out such a terrifying amount of void and wielding it meaningfully, even though it was rewriting him from within. Wind Embrace has been activated. The wind caught Northern instantly, yanking him backward as the sphere of non-existence expanded where he'd been standing. The air currents screamed in his ears as they carried him away from the spreading void. Call! The Chaos Prince's voice rang out. Keep the others busy. This one is mine. The tyranny of reflection moved like liquid darkness, his form splitting into dozens of mirror images that scattered across the battlefield. Each one wore a different expression of madness. Some grinning, others weeping, a few completely blank. Northern's gaze flicked to where his companions were. He couldn't let Call reach them. True Clone has been activated. One clone leaped out of Northern, then another and another and another. Many clones started pouring out of him, scattering in every direction. Northern raised a corner of his lips toward the Chaos Prince, who froze in shock, staring at him. He snarled angrily. Do you think so little of me that you think you can spare more halves of yourself? Northern's smile was small, insidious, but it seemed to rattle Anki greatly. The Chaos Prince definitely hadn't expected such a calm expression. After he thought he'd robbed Northern of everything, Northern should be weak. So why was he smiling? What wasn't he accounting for? His eyes suddenly went cold with intense malice and seriousness. You're boring, Northern. I don't like you anymore. Northern's annoying smile remained. I never liked you, to be honest. I'm glad to realize I was right. Chaos Prince clapped his hands together, and the void erupted from his palms in twin streams of annihilation. The beams carved through Northern's clones like they were made of paper, erasing them from existence without even the courtesy of leaving corpses behind. Eclipse Step has been activated. Northern vanished into the shadow cast by a falling piece of rubble, reappearing 50 meters away. But the Chaos Prince was faster, or perhaps he simply knew where Northern would emerge. A fist wreathed in void energy was already swinging toward Northern's face. Reversal has been activated. The kinetic force reversed mid-strike, slamming back into the Chaos Prince and hurling him backward. He stopped himself after being thrown about 30 meters away, then spat blood to the side and glared at Northern with cold, examining eyes. I made sure to minimally expend myself while fighting Father. He, on the other hand, how is he even standing? Why does his blow still hurt this much? Northern's expression remained cold. He raised one hand, and the temperature plummeted. Absolute Zero has been activated. The air itself froze. Moisture crystallized instantly into intricate patterns of ice. The ground became brittle and white. Even sound seemed to slow, creating an eerie, muffled atmosphere. The Chaos Prince found his movements sluggish, his limbs heavy. Oh, that's annoying. But the void began to pulse around him, creating pockets of warmth where reality itself bent to accommodate his existence. The ice cracked and shattered in those spaces. You'll have to do better than that. Lightning Chains has been activated. Lightning erupted from Northern's fingertips. A brilliant arc of electrical fury that struck the Chaos Prince in the chest. But it didn't stop there. The bolt jumped to the nearest reflective surface, one of Call's mirror duplicates, then to one of Northern's clones, then back to the Chaos Prince, building in intensity with each jump. The Chaos Prince froze mid-strike, his entire being rattled to an electrifying core, forcing out a maddening scream. However, what started as a scream only descended into cold, irritating laughter. He thrust both arms skyward, and the void responded like a living thing. A massive sphere of non-existence formed above them, growing larger with each passing second. With eyes wild and voice bellowing like with the force of the storm, he yelled, "If I can't kill you cleanly, I'll just erase everything." Chapter 1165. Teaching a Lesson. The sphere of non-existence expanded above them like a malignant sun, swallowing light itself. The Chaos Prince's laughter echoed across the wasteland, wild and unhinged. Northern's eyes narrowed, blue light intensifying. Layer 3. Causality fracture has been activated. Time seemed to fragment. Northern saw 3 possible futures simultaneously. Path 1. The sphere drops, erasing everything within a kilometer radius. Path 2. He dodges, but his companions are consumed. Path 3. He counters now before the sphere reaches critical mass. Northern chose the third path. One strike has been activated. Every ounce of power in his body condensed into a single point. Lightning crackled along his arm. Frost formed crystalline patterns on his skin, and the air around his fist warped from sheer concentrated force. He punched upward. The impact shattered the sphere of non-existence before it could fully form, the resulting shockwave creating a crater beneath their feet. The Chaos Prince stumbled backward, genuine surprise flashing across his face. Impressive. But Phantom Strike has been activated. Echo has been activated. Northern's fist didn't just strike once. The attack echoed, landing twice in the exact same spot with 0 delay between impacts. The Chaos Prince's attempt to phase through the first blow left him perfectly positioned for the second. The strike connected with his sternum with a sickening crack. Gah! The Chaos Prince was launched backward, skidding across the desert floor. But even as he slid, void essence pulsed from his body, and the broken bones began to snap back into place. He scrunched his face at Northern and spat out blood again. "You're stronger than I calculated. Father must have really tired you out. Yet here you are, hitting like a meteor." Northern didn't respond. He simply advanced, his movements deliberate and terrifying in their efficiency. The Chaos Prince's smile returned, though it was strained now. "Fine. Let's see how you handle this." His form blurred, and suddenly there were dozens of him, no hundreds. Each one wielding void essence, each one real in some fundamental sense. Mirage has been activated, but Northern countered instantly. His own strike created 7 visual copies, each one indistinguishable from the real attack. The Chaos Prince's duplicates shattered like glass as Northern's blade-like strikes carved through them. The Chaos Prince snarled. "Those are illusions." "Are they?" Refraction has been activated. Northern's next punch bent through space. He struck from the front, but the attack landed from behind, catching the Chaos Prince in the kidney. The prince gasped, void essence flickering around him protectively. "You!" Light Strike has been activated. Northern moved at the speed of light. The Chaos Prince saw him begin the motion, but by the time his brain processed the image, Northern's fist was already embedded in his jaw. The sound came after, a thunderous crack that echoed across the desert. The Chaos Prince's head snapped to the side, saliva and blood spraying in an arc. His body ragdolled through the air, tumbling end over end until he crashed into a stone outcropping 300 meters away. The stone exploded into dust. For a moment there was silence. Then the Chaos Prince emerged from the debris, his jaw hanging at an unnatural angle. He reached up with both hands and, with a grotesque wet pop, forced it back into place. "Okay." His voice was slightly slurred as he spoke and walked towards Northern, glaring. "Okay, I see how it is." The void essence around him intensified, turning from smoky wisps into roaring torrents. His eyes went completely black, no whites remaining. "You want to play rough? Let's play rough." He vanished. Not with speed, he simply ceased to exist in one location and appeared in another, directly in front of Northern. His fist, wrapped in layers of condensed void, shot toward Northern's face. Reversal has been activated. The kinetic energy reversed, But this time the Chaos Prince was ready. He let the reversal happen, used the momentum to spin into a devastating roundhouse kick aimed at Northern's temple. The kick connected. Northern's head barely moved. The Chaos Prince's eyes widened in shock as his shin bone fractured against Northern's skull, which felt less like flesh and more like striking a mountain. What? Full impact has been activated. Recoil has been activated. Northern's counterpunch carried not just his own strength, but the kinetic energy of the Chaos Prince's kick, returned with interest. His fist drove into the prince's chest, and the sound was like a hammer striking an anvil. The Chaos Prince's ribcage shattered. Multiple bones broke simultaneously, fragments driven inward. He coughed blood, genuine pain flashing across his face for the first time. He whizzed slightly in pain. The pain of being rewritten by Void should override any. Why does it hurt this much? Riposte has been activated. Northern's follow-up strike was even harder, the counterattack damage stacking exponentially. This time he aimed for the prince's shoulder, and the entire joint dislocated with a wet crunch. The Chaos Prince screamed. It wasn't the theatrical scream from before. This was raw, primal agony. You bastard! Void essence erupted from him in a desperate explosion, forcing Northern back. The prince's arm hung uselessly, but void tendrils wrapped around it, puppeting it back into position. The bones ground against each other audibly as they were forced to heal. Chaos Prince gasped. You don't understand. I need this body. I need to be whole when Mother fully integrates. If you break me too much, Northern's voice came coldly. Then you shouldn't have annoyed me. Ruinous momentum has been activated. Northern struck again, and again. Each hit harder than the last, momentum building infinitely. The first punch broke 2 ribs. The second broke 4. The third shattered the Chaos Prince's forearm when he tried to block. Stop! 7th fragments has been activated. This was the 7th consecutive strike. It ignored all defenses, striking directly at the Chaos Prince's core, his soul itself. The prince's eyes went wide as something fundamental inside him cracked. No. No, no, no. Phase strike has been activated. Northern's fist phased through the Chaos Prince's desperate void barrier and struck his sternum again. The same spot he'd hit earlier. The already damaged bone shattered completely this time, fragments embedding in his lungs. The Chaos Prince collapsed to his knees, blood pouring from his mouth. But his eyes were still burning with that manic intensity. You think this is over? He laughed, blood bubbling between his teeth. I fought things that would make you weep, Northern. This is nothing. And then he moved. Chapter 1166. Northern versus Chaos Prince. The Chaos Prince's body twisted in a way that defied anatomy. His broken ribs shifted. His shattered bones realigned just enough, and he flowed like water around Northern's next strike. His eyes narrowed as he backpedaled, void essence swirling around his feet to propel him across the sand. Northern didn't give him space. He pressed his advantage immediately, his expression unchanging. The Chaos Prince's hands moved in complex patterns, weaving void essence like thread. Symbols formed in the air, ancient sorcerer signs that predated the shattering itself. Northern flinched, struck by a sudden premonition. Of course, he knew this wasn't premonition at all. His intuition was prophecy. The void essence condensed into 7 rotating rings around the Chaos Prince's body. Each ring hummed with a different frequency, and as they spun faster, reality began to distort. 7th circle binding, empty throne. The rings expanded outward, and suddenly Northern found himself standing in what appeared to be a throne room. Something that almost resembled the Void Palace. Obsidian pillars stretched into darkness above. The ground beneath his feet was polished void stone that reflected nothing. The Chaos Prince's voice resounded from every corner. Ring a bell. He clicked his tongue pitifully. I may not have a body fit to assimilate the void like yours, Northern, but I've been researching this thing for 10,000 years. I have more uses for the void than you ever will. Northern narrowed his eyes, blue light emanating from them. Layer 1. Third eye has been activated. Of course. This was nothing compared to the real Void Palace. It was an illusion woven with void essence, masterfully crafted, anchored to reality through sorcerous geometry, but still fundamentally false. The Chaos Prince couldn't afford the expenditure it would take to craft the real limitless void. Right now, he was too weak to even dare. Absolute lock has been activated. Northern locked the void essence in place, freezing the construct mid-formation. The throne room flickered, then shattered like glass. The Chaos Prince stood 50 meters away, genuine irritation crossing his face. You nullified 7th circle sorcery with a thought. What kind of monster are you? Were you hiding your abilities all along to deceive me? He didn't wait for an answer. His hands blurred through another series of signs. Faster this time. 9 blade-like projections of pure void essence materialized around Northern, each one positioned at a precise angle. They struck simultaneously from different vectors, above, below, left, right, diagonals, all aimed at joints and vital points. The Chaos Prince laughed wildly in absolute confidence that he trapped Northern. I've lived 11,000 years, Northern. 11,000. What do you think you are? You're not even 18, damn it. This is just one of the 100 martial disciplines I've mastered. Wind compass has been activated. Northern sensed the air displacement from each blade before they struck. The wind told him their exact trajectories. Eclipse step has been activated. He melted into his own shadow and reappeared outside the attack radius. The 9 void blades converged on empty space, passing through each other harmlessly. The Chaos Prince's eyes widened slightly. You're reading my attacks through air currents? That's actually brilliant. He switched tactics immediately. If air displacement was the tell, he'd eliminate the air. The void essence around him pulsed, and suddenly a sphere of absolute vacuum formed. 10 meters in diameter, with Northern at the edge. No air, no sound, no medium for wind compass to read. And from within that vacuum, the Chaos Prince attacked. His body blurred, and he closed the distance in a fraction of a second, his knee driving toward Northern's liver with surgical precision. The blow connected. Northern's body absorbed the impact, barely registering the damage. But the Chaos Prince was already moving, flowing into the next strike of his combination. Elbow to the throat, palm strike to the solar plexus, heel kick to the temple. Each strike hit with technical perfection, targeting pressure points and vital areas. But Northern's body was too dense, too heavy. Each impact left only shallow scratches, bruises that healed almost instantly. The Chaos Prince leaped back, breathing harder now. His ribs were still broken. Northern could see void essence holding them together like scaffolding. A small smile played across Northern's face. What's wrong, pal? You look like you're having trouble landing a serious hit. The Chaos Prince, with a strained expression, looked down at his hands, then at Northern. His eyes were calculating something. Northern laughed. Ha, you're working really hard. I just might let you land a few hits. The Chaos Prince slammed both palms into the ground, and void essence erupted downward. It spread through the desert floor like roots, going deeper and deeper until the ground beneath Northern's feet simply ceased to exist. Not an explosion, not a collapse. The matter was erased, creating a perfectly spherical void 100 meters deep. Northern dropped into darkness. But before he could react, the Chaos Prince was already executing the next phase. Void essence materialized as chains, hundreds of them, all manifesting from the walls of the sphere, all converging on Northern as he fell. The chains wrapped around Northern's limbs, his torso, his neck. Each one was reinforced with sorcerer's formulas, designed to restrict movement rather than inflict damage. The Chaos Prince appeared at the edge of the void sphere, looking down. 17,000 years ago, I learned this technique from a tyrant called the Chain Emperor. It doesn't hurt you. It just makes sure you can't move while I do this. He raised both hands above his head, and void essence began to gather. But this time it was different. This time he was weaving it through precise mathematical patterns, creating geometric shapes that hurt to look at. Catastrophe theorem, void collapse array. The shapes multiplied, forming a complex three-dimensional mandala above the sphere. Each line, each angle calculated to create maximum destruction when activated. The prince's smile was triumphant. You're strong, Northern. Stronger than anyone I've fought except Father, of course, the origins too. You fairly deserve to stay in the top 10 rankings. But you can't beat my years of accumulated knowledge. His hands moved to trigger the array. That's when Northern opened his eyes. Soul Thread has been activated. Chapter 1167. King of Counters. Invisible threads erupted from Northern's body, spreading through the void sphere in an instant. They attached to the chains, to the walls, to the geometric array above, to the Chaos Prince himself. Thread severance has been activated. Every chain snapped simultaneously. But more than that, Northern severed the sorcerous connections binding the catastrophe theorem together. The complex array unraveled, its mathematical precision destroyed by cutting the threads of cause and effect that held it stable. The Chaos Prince's eyes went wide with genuine shock. You can manipulate soul threads? But that's... Gossamer domain has been activated. The entire sphere became Northern's territory. Every surface within 100 meters was now connected to him through invisible soul threads. He could sense everything, manipulate everything, control everything within that space, including the Chaos Prince's position. Fate's needle has been activated. An invisible thread pierced the prince's soul before he could react. His body went rigid as Northern's will imposed itself through the connection. The prince tried to move, tried to teleport, tried to explode void essence, but his body wouldn't respond. The thread made him a puppet, and Northern was pulling the strings. Northern pulled himself up out of the sphere using the soul threads like spider silk, emerging to stand on solid ground. The Chaos Prince floated beside him, held immobile by the thread through his soul. "Let me explain something." Northern spoke quietly. "You've had 20,000 years to learn techniques, to master spell arts, to refine your skills." He walked around the frozen prince, examining him like a specimen. "But I have talents you can't replicate through practice. Abilities that don't care about your experience or your knowledge." Binding weave has been activated. More soul threads erupted, wrapping the Chaos Prince in an intricate pattern. The more he would struggle, the tighter they would constrict. The prince's voice came out strained, forced through gritted teeth. "You think this will hold me?" Void essence began to pulse from his body, trying to corrode the soul threads. And it was working slowly but working. The threads began to fray where the void touched them. Northern acknowledged. "Clever indeed, but not clever enough." Return has been activated. Every bit of damage the void essence did to Northern's soul threads would be inflicted back on the Chaos Prince after 5 seconds. The prince would literally hurt himself trying to break free. The Chaos Prince's eyes blazed with fury and, "Was that respect? You're adapting to everything I throw at you." Blood ran from his mouth as his own void corrosion began to damage him. Every technique, every strategy. It's like fighting someone who has the perfect counter prepared in advance. He coughed, more blood spattering. "Fine, fine. You want to see what I'm really capable of? What 20,000 years of desperation taught me." The void essence around him intensified to a level that made reality scream. His body began to blur, becoming indistinct. "You know, Northern, I have been fighting, running, dying, and coming back alive for a while now. The firsts, they were really bent on killing me. I'm sure you'd have seen it in my beautiful tower you had parked at the sea harbor. You seem to have gotten by eye, but my eye is not the only one that exists. Asides from all 12 plagues Northern, I have 13 vestige scattered across your world. Did my vestige make you a prodigy at 5th strongest? And it is the only one I've been able to get back. So boy, do not pride yourself in overpowering me. I will be back, and when I'm back, I certainly will destroy you. As a gift." He grinned hard, and the next thing his form split. Not clones, not illusions, actual quantum superposition. The Chaos Prince now existed in 17 different states simultaneously. Each one real, each one able to act independently. Void recursion, branching catastrophe. 17 different versions of the Chaos Prince moved at once, each one using a different combat style, each one attacking from a different angle, each one reinforced with sorcery that bent the laws of physics. One used the Celestial Fist technique, each strike carrying the weight of a collapsing star. Another channeled flowing shadow palm, his movements too fluid to track. A third employed the Titan breaking method, his blows designed to shatter even the most durable defenses through pure vibrational resonance. 3 more wove sorcery while the others attacked, void lances, reality tears, existence erasure beams. The remaining 11 fought with weapons manifested from void essence, swords, spears, chains, axes, each one wielded with master-level technique. They converged on Northern from all directions at once. And Northern smiled. It was a small smile, cold, almost pitying. One's true self has been activated. True clone has been activated. Perfect copies of Northern erupted from his body. But these weren't just duplicates, they were him. Each one shared his memories, his abilities, his will. And unlike the Chaos Prince's quantum states, Northern's clones could coordinate perfectly because they were the same consciousness. The 17 Chaos Princes crashed into 17 Northerns, and the desert exploded into chaos. One Northern faced the Celestial Fist version. The prince's punch carried star collapsing weight. But reversal has been activated. The weight reversed, crushing the Chaos Prince's own fist. Another Northern intercepted the flowing Chaos Palm version. The movements were too fluid, at the same time too chaotic to track with normal eyes, but Layer 2. Flow perception has been activated. Northern could see the momentum, the energy flow of the chaos itself. And he had to admit that the Chaos Prince's manner of wielding chaos was nothing short of astonishing. He was awed by it. The man weaved chaos like a body, his body, he flowed with it and was in perfect fluidity with its state. It took a while for this version of Northern to adjust because even though he could read each movement before it completed, countering with perfect timing was another issue. The Chaos Prince was either too fast, or took account of his predictive eyes and went too slow, instead setting traps for him. But Northern adapted in 10 moves, and the Chaos Prince was finding it difficult to land hits. A third Northern caught the Titan breaking technique head-on. The vibrational resonance was designed to shatter anything, but Northern's body was too dense, too fundamentally solid. The vibrations dispersed harmlessly. Full impact has been activated, and then Northern returned the impact with all its accumulated force, shattering that version's sternum. The sorcery-wielding Chaos Princes launched their attacks, void lances, reality tears, existence erasure beams. Absolute lock has been activated. You cannot lock a powerful concept. But channel pathways can be locked. Just do it. Mid-fight, this version of the Chaos Prince suddenly found it difficult to fill his attacks with void essence and strengthen his body. Redirection has been activated. He sent the attacks back at their casters. 3 Chaos Princes were forced to dodge their own sorcery. The weapon-wielding versions swarmed from all sides, their techniques flawless. Sword strikes that could cut space. Spear thrusts that ignored distance. Chain techniques that bound space itself. But Northern and his clones moved with terrible efficiency. Phantom Strike has been activated. Refraction has been activated. Light Strike has been activated. Each Northern became a whirlwind of counters. Attacks came from impossible angles, struck at light speed, phased through defenses. The Chaos Prince with the Void Sword found his blade caught mid-swing, then watched in horror as Northern's counterstrike shattered his jaw. The spear wielder's thrust was redirected, his own weapon driven through his shoulder. The Chainmaster's bindings were severed by invisible soul threads before they could constrict. One by one, the 17 Chaos Princes were being dismantled. The original, if there even was an original anymore, watched with growing desperation as his quantum states collapsed under Northern's assault. His voice trembled as he saw another version of himself fall. How? How are you countering everything? Northern's voice came from all of his clones at once, creating an eerie stereo effect. Oh, come on, don't look so dismayed. We're just getting started. Chapter 1168. The Inevitable Battle. As Northern spoke, the Chaos Prince stood frozen in dread. All around him, each one of Northern's clones was tearing him apart, and a single Northern was advancing toward him like an inevitability. He clenched his fist. His deranged expression from earlier had vanished. He looked at Northern, and a mixture of horror and hatred contorted his features. What had gone wrong? What had he not accounted for? What exactly was he missing? Why was Northern so strong and so impossible to kill? Did I get outsmarted? By a child? One who hasn't even lived 1,000 years. This was something he had been preparing for. Letting his father kill him, shattering himself into fragments. Missing close to 10,000 years of civilization's development, all for this. To have this moment. First, he'd only managed to recover half of his soul. He didn't know what had happened, but he couldn't sense it anywhere anymore. But that was no issue. If Cryos had died and Northern had found a way to cut the flow, it was fine. He'd gotten Void, which was more than compensation, even though this was only half of what Void truly was. But he knew where the other half was. And he also had the Plague Kings. He couldn't feel the presence of 2, but 10 was more than enough, and his remaining 12 vestiges had each found purchase in one host or another and would have grown it. By the time he assembled it all, mainly with the other half of the Void, he would surpass his prime. His plan was perfect. He had even successfully created a weapon that could kill the Origins, and all of this was to test it beyond their watch. Although that hadn't gone smoothly because Ul was somewhere around. But the weapon had been created. Ul being there was, in fact, a blessing, a way to send a message to the Origins and tell them to come for him. But the problem was Northern. The more Chaos Prince studied him, the more he realized the chances of leaving here alive were growing quite slim. And truth be told, he was starting to get anxious. A human? A child? Is making me anxious? He twisted between rage at himself and disbelief at his situation. He internalized his failure and called himself pathetic. Northern stopped in front of him and raised his chin with a slight chuckle. I recognized that look. The corner of his lips spread fully to reveal a savoring smile. Don't beat yourself up. The biggest flaw in your plan was me finding your vestige. From that moment on, Anki, it was never going to go your way. The Chaos Prince glared at him. How can you be so sure? You received a boost, that's all. Are they sponsoring you too? Northern's gaze fell half-lidded. It was mockingly dangerous. How can I be so sure, you ask? Because it is I, Chaos Prince. I am the demon, the flaw that is going to eat into every one of you bastards' bones like a disease. I don't care who or where they are, be it Origins, tyrants, or the gods. I will destroy them if they try to take what belongs to me. He looked down for a moment. And thank you for inspiring me. I know just how to do that. I've always wondered what it would feel like owning a nation of my own. His grin widened. I will build an entire empire, Anki. One whose only purpose is to kill you all, gods, Origins, and whatever the primordials are. I will kill them all. Chaos Prince's eyes had widened by the time Northern stopped talking. They were also trembling in disbelief. He was speechless. Northern's tone lightened. Well then, shall we bring this fateful battle to an end? Northern opened his hand, a sleek blade forming in it. The illusioned hefter caught the silvery glow of the moonlight and reflected it coldly as Northern raised it into the air. The Chaos Prince did not move. He just stood there, pressing his lips together. Then he bit his lower lip so hard that blood splattered out. He ground his teeth intensely, his eyes darting around frantically. Northern paused, slightly confused. Then the Chaos Prince shot eyes burning with hatred at him. Northern had never seen anything like it. His eyes were red with pain. So much pain. His jaw was covered in blood. All the muscles of his face beneath his skin could be seen. I will take everything from you. The words, for some reason, shook Northern, and his expression darkened with cold anger. That is, if you leave this place. As Northern brought the sword down, the Chaos Prince suddenly screamed. Byron! Northern's eyes widened in shock. Hearing the name didn't deter his strike, but he slowed for a moment, and the Chaos Prince exploded into millions of skin fragments, scattering in every direction. Before Northern's sword could fall, it was blocked by a familiar face. Long white hair flowed backward, and radiant blue eyes looked at Northern with cold intensity, no emotion flashing through them at all. Everything about Byron felt the same except the look in his eyes. They lacked the reverence, the honor they usually held whenever Byron looked at him. Even in the least of situations, Byron had always looked at him with honor and reverence. To have the same Byron regard him so coldly, Northern felt something like a thick, sharp pain tear into his chest. The look in Byron's eyes was enough to tell him that his Sword King was gone. Ahoy! You will have to kill him and turn him into an echo. Is there no other way? The influence of the void is strong, particularly in this summon. All other souls have been recovered except this one. It seems the Chaos Prince had marked the strongest summon and salvaged all the rest to have absolute control over this one. Northern's gaze darkened with pain. Of course, Byron, being who he was, couldn't have fallen into control so easily. That meant the Chaos Prince had been doing this since the very beginning. He had probably tried to control all of Northern's soul summons but discovered which ones would be very difficult to dominate. And then he'd picked the strongest of them all and salvaged all the others to focus on that single one. The others were salvaged, which was probably why the rest could be recovered even through the memory of chaos. How many souls currently exist within me? 7,891. Would you like me to echonize souls and fuse them to create a supreme echo capable of fighting the Sword King? Northern thought about it for a moment. Then he answered, no. It would be a disrespect to such a great man to be slain that way. If anyone is capable of killing him, it has to be those he taught. That is his definition of death. According to the memory Northern saw. Chapter 1169. Northern vs. Byron Part 1. The desert sand erupted as Northern launched himself forward. The Odachi in Byron's hand came up in a blur of lightning-wrapped steel, the clash sending a shockwave that carved a crater 15 feet wide beneath them. Northern's blade vanished the instant before impact, reappeared at Byron's kidney line. The Sword King twisted, Odachi reversing grip, catching the invisible edge on his crossguard. Sparks of lightning traced the phantom sword's outline for a heartbeat before both warriors exploded apart, each taking a dozen steps across empty air. They met again above the dunes. Steel screamed against steel. Northern fainted high, his blade flickering visible in rapid succession. Byron didn't track the weapon. He tracked Northern's shoulders, his hips, reading the body that wielded the sword. The Odachi carved upward through where Northern's blade would be, lightning crackling along its edge, and caught illusioned hefter just as it phased back into reality. The force sent Northern spinning. He converted the momentum into a lateral slash that would have opened Byron's throat. The Sword King leaned back until his spine was parallel to the ground, Odachi coming around in a rising arc that forced Northern to parry with both hands. They hung there, locked blade to blade, suspended 40 feet above the desert floor. Lightning crawled down Byron's Odachi toward Northern's hands. Northern's blade vanished, reappearing behind Byron's guard, forcing the Sword King to release and spin away. They both dropped, hit sand simultaneously, and exploded forward again. The night erupted with their violence. Northern's blade traced 7 lines of silver light in a single second, each one aimed at a different vital point, each one timed to manifest precisely when it would meet flesh. Byron's Odachi became a wheel of lightning, deflecting strikes Northern hadn't even made yet, reading the rhythm of invisible steel through nothing but the whisper of displaced air and the minute shifts in Northern's stance. Their feet never stopped moving. Northern advanced in a spiral pattern, each step calculated to force Byron's guard to overextend. The Sword King gave ground in measured retreats, each backward step baiting Northern's aggression into killing zones where the Odachi waited. A thrust aimed at Byron's heart. The Sword King sidestepped, Odachi coming down to pin the invisible blade against the sand. Northern released his grip, rolled forward over Byron's lowered guard, and illusioned Hefter materialized in his hand mid-roll to slash at the Sword King's exposed back. Byron's Odachi was already there, reversed grip, blade pointed down, catching Northern's strike on the flat. The lightning discharge sent Northern tumbling across the sand. He converted the fall into a backward handspring, came up with his blade already in motion. They clashed in the air again. Once, twice, 7 times in 3 seconds. Each impact sent them higher. The desert floor fell away 50 feet, 100, 200. They fought in the space between earth and cloud, their swords leaving trails of silver and electric blue against the night sky. Northern attacked from 17 different angles simultaneously, his blade phasing in and out of visibility so rapidly it created afterimages of steel that existed and didn't exist in the same moment. Byron's Odachi moved in perfect defensive spirals, each rotation precisely calibrated to intercept threats that hadn't fully materialized. But Northern was learning. Each exchange taught him the rhythm of Byron's defense. The Sword King fought in perfect circles, every movement flowing into the next without beginning or end. To break that circle, Northern needed to. He stopped attacking. The cessation was more violent than any strike. Byron's Odachi continued its defensive rotation, found nothing, and for a fraction of a heartbeat, the Sword King's guard opened. Northern was already there. Illusioned Hefter thrust invisible through the gap, aimed at Byron's throat. The Sword King twisted, Odachi coming around impossibly fast, but Northern's blade was already gone. Reappeared at waist height, cutting upward. Byron bent backward, spine arching, but Northern's follow-through brought the blade around in a reverse grip slash that should have disemboweled him. The Odachi's pommel caught Illusioned Hefter just below the hilt, deflecting it by inches. Lightning erupted from the point of contact, sending Northern tumbling through the air. He spun through the discharge, landed on nothing, and pushed off empty air to attack from a new vector. They fell and rose and fell again, fighting across 3 dimensions as if gravity were merely a suggestion. The clouds above became their battlefield. They clashed within the vapor, their blades leaving cleared channels through the moisture where their strikes displaced the air itself. Northern emerged from one cloud bank, blade invisible, stance suggesting a downward cut. Byron rose from below, Odachi held in both hands above his head, prepared to meet the strike. At the last instant, Northern twisted midair, his body rotating horizontal, blade manifesting at hip level in a slash aimed at Byron's ribs. The Sword King released his Odachi with his left hand, let the blade drop to catch Northern's strike on its edge, while his now free hand shot out and grabbed Northern's sword arm at the wrist. For a moment they hung there, eye to eye, close enough to share breath. Lightning crackled along Byron's grip, burning through Northern's sleeve. Northern's blade phased invisible and out of the Sword King's trap, manifested again in his other hand already cutting toward Byron's neck. Byron released Northern and caught his falling Odachi with his free hand, bringing it up in time to parry. The clash sent them both spiraling away through the clouds, each tumbling through vapor trails of their own violence. They emerged on opposite sides of the cloud layer. The moon illuminated them from above. 2 figures suspended in the night, swords held ready. Northern attacked first. He didn't move toward Byron. Instead he pushed off the air itself, building momentum through empty space, each push creating small whirlwinds of displaced atmosphere. By the time he reached the Sword King, his speed had tripled. Illusioned Hefter came invisible, a straight thrust with Northern's full weight behind it. Byron's Odachi deflected it high. Northern's blade vanished mid-deflection, reappeared cutting low. Byron dropped into the strike, letting it pass over his lowered body, while his Odachi swept up from below. Northern twisted, avoided the counterstrike, and planted his foot on the flat of Byron's rising blade. He used it as a springboard, launching himself into a spinning slash that carved 3 separate arcs through the space where Byron's head had been. The Sword King had already ducked into a roll through empty air, his Odachi extended behind him in a one-handed grip, the blade's lightning trail serving as a barrier that Northern couldn't cross without being electrocuted. Northern crossed it anyway. Illusion Hefter phased through the lightning, materialized on the other side, and would have taken Byron's leg off at the knee if the Sword King hadn't somehow anticipated this and brought his Odachi around in a reverse grip slash that caught Northern's blade at an angle. The deflection sent Northern spinning. He used the momentum, his body rotating through 7 full rotations before his feet found purchase on a condensed platform of air that shouldn't have been able to support his weight. He pushed off immediately, blade already in motion. They clashed in the center of the cloud layer. Steel met steel 57 times in 8 seconds. Neither gave ground because there was no ground to give, only air and velocity and the perfect mathematical precision of their blades finding each other through darkness and vapor. Northern's attacks came from impossibility. His blade visible from one angle, invisible from another, existing in a state of uncertainty that should have made defense impossible. But Byran defended anyway, his odachi moving in perfect spirals that somehow intercepted threats that weren't fully committed to reality yet. They fought downward, their clash carrying them toward the desert floor in a spiral of steel and lightning. The sand approached rapidly, first distant, then close, then immediate. They hit the ground simultaneously, their impact creating a crater that spread outward in concentric rings. Neither stopped moving. Northern rolled with the landing, came up attacking. Byran absorbed the impact through his knees, his odachi already rising to meet Northern's invisible strike. The clash sent them bouncing across the desert like stones skipping across water, each impact with the sand creating new craters, each bounce carrying them dozens of feet before the next collision. They fought through the bounces, their blades meeting in midair between each ground strike. Northern landed first. His feet dug into sand, creating furrows as he arrested his momentum. Byran touched down 30 feet away. His odachi held in a low guard, lightning crackling along its edge with such intensity that the sand beneath him began to fuse into glass. They stood there, both breathing hard despite their supernatural endurance. The desert around them bore the scars of their battle, craters and glass formations and cleared channels where their clash had displaced entire dunes. Northern's grip on illusioned Hefter shifted slightly, his stance lowered by inches. His weight transferred from his back foot to his front foot. Not movement but the preparation for movement, the coiled spring before release. Byran saw it. His expression hardened, cold, focused. The Sword King's own stance shifted in response, his odachi rising fractionally, his weight redistributing to counter whatever Northern was about to do. Neither moved. They stood there, separated by 30 feet of scarred desert, each waiting for the other to commit, each reading the microscopic tells that would reveal the coming strike. The wind died. The sand settled. Even the lightning along Byron's blade seemed to pause. Then Northern moved. Hello everyone, this is Shadow. Due to copyright restrictions on YouTube, I can't publish many of the audiobooks you love. That's why I've created a special paid service where you can enjoy over 300 high-quality audiobooks from platforms like Webnovel, Pocket FM, Audible, Wuxia, and more. Each novel comes as a one-time purchase, no subscriptions, no hidden fees. After payment, you'll receive full access via Telegram, along with all future updates for that novel. You'll find a wide selection of your favorite genres and titles, always in premium audio quality. Check the full list of available novels in the description. DM me now to get your favorite stories in audiobook form and start listening today.